he wouldn't have to make a choice. He just, yes, okay, fine. You see, that's the problem. We read these words in the scripture, but we don't read between the lines. We don't imagine what it's really like. You know, when I was a kid, I can remember I must have been about 5. That goes back quite a few years. I must have awakened screaming because the family cat had done its thing all over me. And I mean number 2. Ugh. So I let out this scream, and I can remember in my anger picking the cat up and hurling it against the wall. It was strong. And my mother came into the room, turned on the light, and what did she say? Oh, I'm so glad that cat did that on you. It's just she went pew, 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 like any of us would, because it was filthy, stinky. But what did Mom do? She picked me up and come on, and goes into the bathroom and scrubs me down. Did she like that? She had to overcome her revulsion. I was in the hospital not too long ago, and the man in the bed at the far end of the room seemed to be determined he was going to make their lives miserable. So he messed up his linens, and they came in, and you know the process, move him to another place and go through all the changes, put him back in bed, and that fast he messed it up again. Don't know where he got it all, but he did it. And of course the stench filled the room. And here come the nurses going through the same thing, saying to him, "We're so happy that you did that. We can earn our salaries." No, of course not. The same way here. Jesus must have had that moment of revulsion and temptation. Go through it always. Step back. Quote the law, like so many churchmen do when people have messed up their lives. Sorry. See you later. You made your bed, you sleep in it. Jesus had to overcome his revulsion. And it says, Jesus stretched out his hand. Now what would he do? He stretched out his hand. Why didn't he say, "Stay there, keep your distance. I'll zap you from here"? He touched him with his fingertip. I imagine he overcame his revulsion, walked up to the man, and took him in his arms, and must have hugged him and said, "You poor thing. You poor thing. Of course I want to." Those are the words there. Be cured. And instantly he was cured. Now, does that make sense? According to the legend of St. Francis, he was an aristocrat riding on his horse when suddenly one day the horse reared back because it was almost ready to trample on a figure on the road, a leper. Francis wanted to gallop off, and he stopped, and he got off his horse. He came up and he went up and he kissed the man on the hole that was formerly his mouth, pressed a coin in his hand, and then got on his horse, rode off, turned, and the leper was gone. He speaks in his testament of how the Lord brought him into the company of lepers. It finally taught him the futility of living like a rich young man. Jesus touched him and said, "Of course I want to. Be cured." And the leprosy left him at once. And it says something very strange. He ordered him to tell no one. Now, what's that all about? Tell no one. This poor guy hasn't seen his family in years. He's out on the street begging, avoiding people, scuttering around in the alleys. And he's cured, and he can't wait to see his family. And Jesus says, "Don't you tell anybody." So he does sneak home. "You're well again. How did it happen?" He goes, why would he tell him, "Don't tell anybody"? He what?
It'd be like a circus. Everybody else would want the same miracle.
It'd be like a circus. Everybody would want to be cured. What's wrong with that?
Too many to do.
Too many to do. He could have stood on a hill and said, "All you lepers line up, zap, and do it all at once." That's not the reason. Why do we say that suddenly Jesus wants to curtail his miracles? Because he's afraid of the crowds? No, of course not. Why would he say, "Don't tell anybody"? For the same reason, he did not come out into center stage after he turned that water into wine. And only the steward knew. What is the reason? Not his hour had not come. He's beginning to work miracles. But why did he do that? He did it for the leper. I can picture him saying, "Are you happy, Mr. Ex-leper?" "Am I happy? I can't tell you how happy." And Jesus says, "Me too. I'm happy. I did it for you. It's between us, okay? Don't tell anybody." Now we begin to understand what real love is. You do it for the one you love, not for yourself, not for your glory, not so that people recognize you and praise you and give you a medal. When are we going to learn that when you do something good, Jesus says, you don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing? What does he mean? What you do in secret, meaning something good for someone, see, your Father sees in secret. He'll repay you. Don't worry about it. And he'll pay you back 100 times over. We don't believe that. That's why we have to buy ads, and that's what we're doing. Every time we give something to the church, make sure that you put that plaque up there, Father, and don't misspell my name. I'll never forget a stained glass window in a city in California. The name was Mr. and Mrs. such and such Vagina. Oh, I would never print that name. But that's not necessarily charity. It's advertising. The secret giver, the anonymous giver, is the best kind. And that's why I think that it's so wonderful that we've never seen God, in the sense that everything that we have and are and things that we see and enjoy come from God. And you can look under any plant or anywhere, and you'll never see made by God. You owe me one, sent by God. God is the secret lover, the anonymous giver. Now, quote me correctly, when you give something, by all means, take your tax deduction. You don't have to feed the government. Take your tax deduction. But be very careful that even though the government calls it charity, is it really? Have you given anything? Or did you give so that you would get? In which case, it's no longer love. But that's up to you to determine. I was stationed at the retreat house in Malibu, and we have seasonal rains. It doesn't rain all year. At any rate, we were having one of those awful storms, and there were mudslides. The cliffs were coming down, and the mud was spilling onto the highways, and we were stranded on our little hill. But at a break in the rain, I went down into the village in order to fetch the mail. So it was raining again and pouring. And I pulled in to make a left turn into the area, the mall where the post office is, and 2 or 3 cars were ahead of me. Up ahead, there was a young man, and he had a sign up, "I will work for food." Well, I wasn't in a position to hire, so I thought about, we had to wait. I'm going through that business, the same thing that Jesus must have gone through with the leper. Do I or don't I? I watched the 2 or 3 cars up in front of me. They just drove on and ignored him. But as I passed the young man, I handed him a $5 bill. Immediately from him, "God bless you, God bless you." And he kept shouting, "God bless you." And I was thinking, that's my line. And so I went to the post office and got the mail out of the box, was sorting through it, and here was an envelope addressed to me. It wasn't an anniversary or birthday or any reason. It was just a card. And when I opened it, guess what fell out? $5. Cheapskate. $50. Didn't Jesus say that? So I looked up to heaven and said, "Boy, you work in a hurry." So the next day I drove by and dropped 10. Now, do you believe that? No, I didn't. Of course not. But, good question here. If I did drop 10 the second day, which is twice as much, is there any difference between day 1 and day 2, aside from the amount? What is the difference? What? I wanted something back. What's wrong with that? See, what's wrong with that? It's no longer love. And the only thing different between the day 1 and day 2 is what? The intention, the motive. That's what's missing. Jesus says, you do all these things, but your heart is far from me. You don't really intend to help the young man. You're thinking that you're going to get twice as much back. That's greed. That's selfish. It's no longer love. Now you think of that. In all that you do, what is the motive? What is the reason? And so last evening we witnessed Joe and Jan make their commitment to each other. We were thinking, we were trying to understand what marriage really is. A commitment of one person to another. For me, it's the most beautiful thing humans can do. Giving themselves to others for the good of the other. It's really a form of sacrifice. Well, you know how marriage began. It began when God created Adam. And when God went into paradise one day, there was Adam sitting in a corner sulking. God said, "Now what's the matter with you?" Adam says, "Geez, nothing to do. I'm tired of talking to monkeys and dogs and cats. There's nobody to talk to." And God says, "Well, we can fix that up. I can create you a woman, and she'll be very happy to gather food for you and prepare it for you. She'll, when you need clothes, she'll sew the clothes and wash it and iron it for you. And she'll bear you kids, and you won't even have to get up at night to take care of them. She'll never nag you." And you know, his eyes are getting this big, and she'll always be the first one to admit she was wrong in an argument. She'll never have a headache. And she'll always cater to your pleasures and make you happy. Adam was really taken by this, you know. He said, "Well, how much is this going to cost?" And God said, "An arm and a leg." Then he thought a while about that, and he says, "How much can I get for a rib?" And the rest is history. So in the case of Jan and Joe, we saw them give each other themselves fully to develop the other. It was always unilateral giving to the other. Now this will go on for a long time. And I read about where a man 80 years old was now on his deathbed, and he had only a few hours to go. So his wife was there, and she's all worried, and he's croaking his last words, and he's saying, "Honey, you remember way back when we got married, and I was young, I was cheerful, I was handsome, I was wealthy. And just after we got married, we lost all my money, and I lost my hair, but you stayed by me. You were always there. And then we set up our first business, and in no time it went belly up. We lost everything, but there you were right behind me. And now I've gone through this long illness, used up all our savings. I've turned into a grouchy, poverty-stricken old man, and now I'm dying. And with my last breath, I want to say only 3 words to you, sweetheart. You're bad luck. So through thick and thin, good times and bad times, the commitment lasts. That's what marriage is. It ain't easy. And so we're reminded in the letter to the the letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13, the favorite passage of married couples. If I have all the eloquence of men or of angels, but speak without love, I'm only a clashing cymbal and a booming gong. Now, let me interrupt here. Can I preach the gospel without love? Of course I can. It's the motive again. Keep those dollar bills coming, folks. Have you ever heard that line? Of course you have. That's such a parody of the ministry, to turn it into money grubbing. If I have the gift of prophecy, understanding all the mysteries there are, knowing everything, if I have faith in all its fullness, even to move mountains, but without love, then I'm nothing. If I give away all that I possess, I'm committed to someone. I'm married. I give all that I possess piece by piece, even let them take my body to burn it, but am without love, it will do me no good whatever. And I think of that. There are couples, Catholic couples, Christian couples, who are Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, who haven't shared the same room or bed in God knows how long, but they show up in public as Mr. and Mrs. It will do them no good whatever. It's phony. It is not marriage. Love, or God, synonym for God, is always patient and kind. Love is never jealous, never boastful or conceited, never rude or selfish, doesn't take offense, not resentful. Think of God as you're reflecting on this. Love, or God, takes no pleasure in other people's sins, but delights in the truth. Every person is precious, regardless of what the person does. Love, God, is always ready to excuse, to trust, to hope, and to endure whatever comes. Love never comes to an end. Now, if love is so great, and I think we all agree that it is, then the big question is, why do we stop loving? Or, why do we do the opposite of love? Love means choosing freely, of course, to do what is good for someone, to make the person happy, to do what's best and most beneficial for a person. And that includes ourselves, don't forget. but our neighbors as ourselves. Why is it that sometimes we choose to do the opposite? Instead of making someone happy, we choose instead to hurt, to harm, and even to destroy someone. Why? Sin is the opposite of love. That's what sin is. Sin isn't breaking rules, as the scribes and the Pharisees were teaching. Sin is the opposite of the great law of love. It's a deliberate choice to hurt, to destroy, to make miserable. Why? Why do we choose to do that? Any idea? Pardon me? We think of ourselves. That's precisely it. It's what I call the original sin. Remember that expression? Why, you thought that when you were baptized, original sin went away. It was a stain on your soul somehow. They didn't know how to describe it. But as far as I'm concerned, it's the flaw in our human nature. Does that mean that God made us imperfect? No. It means that God made us free. That's the problem. Well, it can become a problem, and it does. So that in our freedom, we are lured by what I call the 7 faces of selfishness, what we used to call the capital sins, 7 capital sins, which are not sins at all. They're the tendencies within us to be selfish in distinct ways. Do you remember them? Starts with pride. Pride. Self-centered, arrogant, conceited, fat-headed, basically selfish. It's the sin of Lucifer, who thought that he was self-sufficient. Every creature comes from God. How can we ever imagine anyone thinking that he can rival God? That's the height of pride. And then what follows pride? Covetousness. Covetousness, what does that mean? Envy. I covet what you have. Envy. I'm jealous. You have something I don't have. And that makes me mad. You're more popular. You're more successful. You have a nicer house. All these crazy ideas that go through our heads that somehow we have to outdo anyone. So silly. How we go chasing after this bubble that doesn't amount to anything. Envy, jealousy, can eat you up. Then what else? What? Oh, lust. Lust, yes. I heard you. What is lust? Jimmy Carter confessed to lust. He said, I've thought of women other than my wife. Well, what does that mean? Of course there are women more attractive than his wife. That's not putting her down at all. So what's wrong with thinking about women other than his wife? So lust is more than just desire. See, lust is desire out of control. All of these things are out of control. So any woman becomes fair game to him. That's lust. I hear that, I'm not a fan, but I hear that the top winner of the country western hit parade or something. I ain't gone to bed with no ugly women, but I sure woke up with a few. Is that the melody? Anyway, that mentality that they're out there for my gratification, self-indulgence. And that's the origin of all these crimes that we're hearing about. Harassment, molestations, pedophilia, that's lust, desire out of control. And so you use people, you exploit them, you manipulate them, you use them. Terribly degrading. What else? Anger, hatred, revenge, wars, capital punishment. Our form of punishing miscreants, convicts, is more often than not revenge. It's anger. You hate your enemy. And what does Jesus say? You love your enemy. People who divorce with sheer animosity. I can't envision two people who have been so close ending up hating each other like the worst enemies, and then cutting them off as though they can forget about them forever. How can that be? And what else? Gluttony. That's clear. That's a problem for many people in our time. Overeating, junk food, obesity. These are the things that are destructive of one's health. And of course it covers things like alcoholism, all the addictions. They're just out of control. What else? Envy. We had that. Covetousness. What? Sloth. Sloth is idleness, laziness, and in many ways I think it is also concealing our faith. You know, just compromising, passing. Don't stand out. See, we're not really proclaiming as Jesus would have us do. And then finally, the big one, avarice, greed, miserliness, piling it up, forgetting what Jesus said. The fat cat filled his barn, settled back, now I can relax. And that evening, the Spirit comes and says, you fool, tonight you die. What does it profit a person to gain the whole world and in the end lose his soul? So every one of these is a facet, an aspect of selfishness. And that always comes in. When last night they made their commitment, I said, you have now just given yourself 100%. You to him, him to you. Now, the moment either of you or both of you begin to renege, and you renege because you are selfish, and that old demon keeps coming up, cheating, cutting corners, compromising, you've got problems. Now, is it possible to live perfect love? You and I know we're weak. We're humans. We have a flaw. Giuseppe and Maria, they have 10 beautiful kids. And Giuseppe is very proud. They're smart. They're popular. Oh, they make him feel good. Oh, he can brag. Well, Maria stopped having kids until 2 years later. Giuseppe, guess what? What? I'm pregnant. Oh, he's happy. So Maria, she have a kid. Ugly. Ugly like sin. Giuseppe is mad. Maria, that our kid? That's our kid, Giuseppe. That's our kid. I don't believe it. And so one day Maria get very sick. She's a dying. So Giuseppe come in and said, Maria, give you one more chance. You tell me the truth, I forgive you, and then you can die. Is that our kid or not? Giuseppe, that's our kid. I tell you, the other 10 are not. It happens. Now, you spell it the way Forrest Gump spells it, with 4 letters. It happens. Evil, corruption, infidelity are realities. It happens. So what do we do about it? And at this point, I think we should take a little breather. When it happens, what do we do about it? We're speaking, of course, about forgiveness. Forgiveness is the greatest gift of love. Don't forget it. I want you to look up at this large image of Jesus hanging on a cross, nailed to it, having been whipped beyond recognition, crowned with thorns, and then death. Why? Why would he let himself be subjected to this? Why did he lay down his life? Except to assure us that our sins are forgiven. Express your gratitude, your amazement. And pledge yourself to follow his advice. Don't ever condemn. Don't ever judge. Always show mercy and grant pardon. Love covers a multitude of sins. A man had 2 sons. One day the younger son said to his father, and I picture him this way. Hey, Pop, how about letting me have the share of the estate that's supposed to come to me? Now, you've got a son who's a dropout. He's been in jail a couple of times. And he comes up to you and says, how about giving me my share of the inheritance? What would you do? What would you do? You say, over my dead body. Yeah. Now that's what you call control, see? That's right, that's control. You're going to control him by your purse strings. In this story, the father does not object. Now that's what you call freedom. Take it, it's yours. That's amazing. And each one of us is really free to make the choices we want. Now, it's true that as the story of the scribes and Pharisees is told in today's reading, Jesus excoriates them. He just lets them have it for being so hard on the people, making all these laws and rules, heavy burdens on people's backs, doing nothing to lift the burden from them. See, every time you have rules, you strip people of their freedom. You must do this, you can't do that. And the more you strip people of freedom, the less chance they have of loving. You're forcing. You're not allowing freedom of choice. And so it says the father, without any question, divided the property. A few days later, younger son got everything together that he had, climbed on his Harley, and boom, with a roar, left for a distant country. A way of saying that he got lost, where he squandered his money on a life of debauchery. He joined up with Hugh Hefner to make it concrete. See? We tend to leave this in scriptural level as abstract. Everybody living with Hugh Hefner is somebody's daughter. And I will never forget being in another diocese and being invited by a doctor to come to have lunch, and took me to the doctor's dining room at this hospital. And one of the people at the table was a man who just told me his old story. His wife was director of Right to Life in the area, and at any rate, he was a prominent doctor in this hospital. And one day their daughter just took off. She surfaced in Florida as a call girl. How do you like that? If you were to ask them, how's Susie? Yeah, she's doing fine down in Florida. What's she doing? Oh, you know. So one day they get a call from her she wants to come home again. So they make this quick trip down there. Now, you are the parents. What do you say to her? How was business? So she came home, and one evening, he's seated in front of the fire, and the girl walks into the room with a stack of money. He did that like this. He said, what's that? It's the money I made. He flew into a rage. He said, I grabbed that money, I threw it into the fire. Don't you ever bring that up again. He had never really forgiven her. She turned and walked out of the room. You can empathize with a man. But like I say, everyone roaming the streets out there is somebody's son and somebody's daughter. Now, when he had spent all his money, the country went through a severe famine. Not sent by God, it's just something that happens. And now he began to feel the pinch. So he was forced to hire himself out to one of the local inhabitants, who put him on his farm to feed pigs. Ugh. Now, for a Jew, that's the worst situation possible. Pigs are the most filthy animals in existence. And too bad they don't understand. They should go to a Chinese restaurant and try out some of that pork. But he was desperate, and he would willingly have filled his belly with the husks, pigs were eating, no one offered him anything. Then